Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast, powered by the Huntsville Madison County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Clark Dunn. Huntsville, Alabama is known as a smart place, but really, what's so smart about it? In this podcast, we will talk to the leaders of Huntsville's economic and cultural development to answer that question. From rockets to genomics, from cyber to music, What's So Smart will explore the visionary and data-driven initiatives that make Huntsville so smart. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Welcome back to the What's So Smart podcast. Today I have the opportunity to sit down with Burke Hare of the Space Development Agency. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I was glad to be here. Quite a privilege.
Yeah. So before we kind of dive into the work you do with the Space Development Agency, talk a little bit about your background. You've had a journey all across the country working in different places in the Air Force, and then obviously now you call Huntsville home. So talk a little bit about kind of your journey to get here.
Well, I mean, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. And my mom, I was always interested in space. And my mom found this little place called Space Camp 40 years ago, 1984. Wow. And I came over here. So my association with Huntsville started when I was about 13 years old. Came back a second time when I was about 15 and went to camp again. And that was pretty much it. And then I went through college, attended Auburn University, and graduated from there and came up here again while I was waiting to be called up for active duty after I was commissioned lieutenant, and worked at the Rocket Center again. And worked over at Aviation Challenge as a counselor about the second year it was open. Actually did some Space Camp counselor work too there. And right at the end, I met the lady who'd become my wife. So I had a Space Camp romance.
Wow.
And then was called up to active duty and did 22 years of space and ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile operations and maintenance work. And came back to Huntsville, finished my last assignment at the Missile Defense Agency, and retired out, and I've been here ever since.
So, and you've been in Huntsville for the last 10 years, has been this last stretch?
Yeah, got here about 2010. Yeah.
Okay. And so what was it like coming back to Huntsville at that point after had been here, in 82, 84, and then seeing Huntsville in 2010, which was still kind of before I would say a lot of the, what we see today kind of came about.
Yeah, the growth in Madison was probably one of the things that was initially just really so shocking to me.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were here before, it was still just little old Madison. There wasn't a lot there. I think the growth of Huntsville itself has just been absolutely staggering. And I like to tell my friends, there's nothing that I want for. Everything's here. Yeah. And I think it's Huntsville has really been able to take advantage of that, and it's been a real joy to see it from back in the 80s, in the 90s, and then come back now and be here for 10 years and watch the growth. And it's been Huntsville has grown, coming from Atlanta that grew kind of crazy. Yeah. Huntsville's growth has been on a much more sustainable pace, which is really a delight to have and participate in.
Yeah. And so I know the role you have now with the SDA is something that kind of came out of the blue. You really weren't really expecting that call you would get, and then you were kind of ready to retire. Talk a little bit about how that kind of came about, and then for those that are listening or watching, what this actually is the Space Development Agency.
Sure. So I retired from the United States Air Force in 2014, and from 2014 to 2022, I was a support contractor, predominantly supporting the Missile Defense Agency. And I have a background in the global positioning system as part of my mission set, which is obviously a large constellation of satellites. Everybody knows what GPS is. And I had the opportunity to command that constellation earlier in life. And a friend of mine called me out of the blue and said, "Listen, we're going to be setting up this Space Operations Center at Redstone Arsenal with the Space Development Agency." And I was familiar with it. I wasn't so sure about it. It only established in 2019, I think it was. And actually, Space Development Agency is older than the United States Space Force, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so it hadn't been around very long, and I was watching it pretty intently. I was really interested to hear more about it. He said, I want you to do this. I need you to do this for me. And I said, okay. And I thought he was going to hire me as a contractor, and he came back and said, no, you're the government guy, and I want you to lead the whole thing.
Wow.
And so I came over to do that. But before I did that, I talked to one of our native sons here, General John Hyten, who at the time had just retired as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I said, I don't know about this this Space Development Agency. It's kind of new, like the Space Force. What do you think? And he said, well, see, the Space Development Agency, I need to say this before I kind of finish that story, and I should say the Space Development Agency is a constructive disruptor in the Department of Defense, and we are an independent, wholly owned subsidiary of the United States Space Force.
Okay.
And as such, we are tasked with basically breaking the mold of how we acquire satellites and how we operate constellations of satellites. And we're actually flying this constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit. So we're doing a proliferated constellation of satellites around the globe that will perform two missions. Primarily, the primary mission is missile warning, missile tracking, with a transport layer to support that, and all the effects go to the terrestrial warfighter. So now, having said that, it was new, and I wasn't sure where we were going to go with this. And I asked General Hyten what he thought about it, and he says, the Space Development Agency is going fast, and it's an opportunity for you. If you get an opportunity, you should jump. He said it's a chance at history and a chance at getting something right.
Wow.
And that really spoke to me, because the Space Development Agency and what we're trying to do is breaking the mold. It's breaking paradigms that we've had. Traditionally, spacecraft take 5 to 10 years programs to mature and go into orbit. We are taking the most available technologies today relevant to our mission sets, and we're putting them on contract. We're having them built we're leveraging the best commercial practices, the best DoD practices, merging all that together. And we're putting these systems into space every 2 years.
Wow.
And so we call them tranches. And so we here, Redstone was picked to be one of the two main satellite command and control operations center nodes for what we call the proliferated warfighter space architecture, which is this proliferated system of satellites with the missions that I've described. There's currently a Tranche 0 on orbit right now, which is what we call the Warfighter Immersion Tranche. We don't operate that here. It's operated in another location. But we've been able to demonstrate the capabilities that we're going to bring forward to the warfighter. Some of those capabilities are really exciting. One particular capability that we just announced is we have there's a technology out there that the warfighter uses called Link 16, which is a beyond line of sight communications capability. Normally, you need an airborne platform to get over the curvature of the Earth. So if you're a warfighter and you need something, targeting data, any kind of data that you need to execute your mission, you could get that data off of Link 16, but you need a flying asset to be able to get that from over the curvature of the Earth, from wherever your headquarters or wherever you need to get it from. One of the capabilities that we are bringing to the table is we're bringing Link 16 from space. So we can take it across the planet, not just the curvature of the Earth. And we were able to demonstrate this capability twice, and we've announced that. We've done it twice with Tranche 0. And we actually did Link 16 from space to a ground target in the Pacific Ocean. And we just announced that we have also been able to communicate over our Tranche 0 satellites from a position across the globe over our Tranche 0 satellite warfighter immersion satellites down to an aircraft carrier at sea and an aircraft on that aircraft carrier at sea. So that is a tremendous capability, because as we go forward with our Tranche 1 satellite system, which will be our true initial warfighter capability. Immersion, we're demonstrating the techniques with our small satellite constellation, small 35 satellites compared to what I'm about to talk about. But we've been able to demonstrate those capabilities to the warfighter to give them confidence that we're going to be able to do this with our future tranches. So what are we doing here at Redstone? We have two operations centers. One is here at Redstone. The other one is at Grand Forks, North Dakota, Grand Forks Air Force Base. We are equal operations centers. We have the capability to be resilient because we're equal. Normally in a space operations environment, you would have a primary node and then you'd send crews to a backup node and you'd bring it up. Well, in this case, we're up, they're down. Then when we're down, they're up. And so that gives us a great power of resiliency in terms of being able to respond and keep the constellation going and respond to the warfighter. So we're really excited about that. And Grand Forks was picked, Redstone was picked. And what's so exciting about that is this is the first department of the Air Force, and we'll talk about how the Space Force is organized if you'd like.
Yeah,
in a
I'd
minute.
love to.
But this is the first Department of the Air Force satellite command and control facility for an operational capability to the warfighter ever installed in the Southeast United States.
Wow.
And it's going to be here at Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah, and I think what's unique too is like the general. I mean, after learning obviously a lot more about what all is being done out there, but it's the mission's a lot different than what the typical work out on the Redstone Arsenal is.
Right.
How has it been? Obviously, the close proximity to a lot of other industries and a lot of other professionals out there probably help, but then also the work that y'all are doing being such a unique thing on the Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing that's unique is the Space Development Agency being in the United States Space Force. We work for the Secretary of the Air Force, so we're a service just like the Marine Corps is under the Secretary of the Navy. The Space Force is under the Secretary of the Air Force, and then Space Development Agency is in the Space Force. So the Space Development Agency is your first United States Space Force presence on Redstone Arsenal, and we're operational. I think that's a key piece. What you see at Redstone predominantly is we're a really great propulsion center. We're really great at acquisition. We're really great at Team Redstone is really great at research and engineering, research development and engineering. We're putting in an operational system that will have mission crews that will be performing an operational space mission to provide reliable, credible combat effects from space to the warfighter.
Wow.
And that is a paradigm shift here at Redstone. We haven't had a warfighting mission established that I'm aware of, direct warfighting mission, quite like we're doing at SDA.
Yeah, and through your time with SDA, has there been? I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the projects you've been able to work on that have kind of that you've really enjoyed. But is there any others that kind of stand out as different initiatives or things that the SDA has been able to do while you've been there with them?
Well, I think one of the neat things that we did working with Redstone Arsenal itself is, Redstone's known as a Federal Center of Excellence, and we're real proud to be a key member of that and a new member. We're kind of one of the new kids on the block. But one of the things that we were able to do, because we have to go fast, we don't have the time to go through the normal process of acquiring and building a facility from the ground up. So what we've had to do is, working with Redstone Arsenal, we've gone in and found existing facilities that we could convert from whatever their original purpose is to a satellite command and control facility. And what we've also been able to do, because Redstone is very unique, they have a very robust Department of Public Works. We've been able to use their authorities and their budget and stay within their budget ceilings to convert our first operations center, which we finished construction on this past July. We converted a program office building into a functional satellite command and control center in 18 months, working with the Department of Public Works at Redstone Arsenal. That is fast.
Yeah.
Very fast, and it really supports our mission, because to stay on top of every 2 years, we're going to be upgrading our constellation and increasing its capability. We're going to go from that initial regional capability, what we call Tranche 1, which will fly here at Redstone Arsenal, and within 26 months, we're supposed to be flying Tranche 2, which is a significant factor, which gives us global coverage to execute our full mission around the globe.
Wow. And so I think we talked a little bit about it off air, but I would love to kind of just address what the current status of satellites are, and then kind of the future growth with SDA and kind of what that will look like in the near future.
Yeah, sure. So I have props for those of you that aren't seeing this. So for those of you that can't see it, I have 3 mason jars. And in these mason jars, I have one mason jar that has 83 peanut M&Ms. So that's right here. These 83 peanut M&Ms represent the current state of the United States Space Force. There's 83 very large, very capable, very exquisite satellite systems in orbit, predominantly in what we call geosynchronous orbit, or at orbits at the same speed that the Earth rotates, and medium Earth orbit. Now, in medium Earth orbit, the predominance of those are our GPS, our Global Positioning System satellites, which we all know and use and rely on. Those are represented in this particular mason jar of 83 or so. Someone could have eaten one. I don't know. I wouldn't eat one now, but yeah, someone could have eaten one. So that's the state of the service today. So every Guardian, everything that the Space Force supports is pretty much represented by this one mason jar of 83 peanut M&Ms. Here at Redstone Arsenal, and with our sister operations center at Grand Forks, we're going to fly around 50 smaller satellites, maybe not as exquisite. We say that we take the technologies that are available today. We're looking, and the director, Dr. Derek Janier, likes to say that better is the enemy of good enough. So we're going to give the warfighter good enough in a quick, rapid succession of capability every 2 years. And we're going to start with 150 satellites, which I have here represented by this mason jar for our what we call Tranche 1. And we expect to start flying these satellites or operating these satellites in the different orbits that we have and the different mission sets that we have for that within the next 6 months from Redstone Arsenal and my sister operations center up at Grand Forks, North Dakota. This is a tremendous capability that we're going to bring in. And this is we're going to basically be flying the majority of satellites that are in the inventory for the United States Space Force. Wow. Now, this is a capability. The 32 satellites of GPS are a capability. So from a capability standpoint, this just represents a capability. But when you look at sheer numbers of satellites, it's pretty impressive to that. 2 years after that, we go. This provides us, by the way, regional combatant commander warfighter capability from our system. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that a satellite is an unmanned spacecraft. So it's got a payload, it's got a spacecraft. It has all the same components that a manned spacecraft or a crewed spacecraft might have. It doesn't have people on it. So you need to think of these as 150 spacecraft being operated, physics is the same, being operated in low Earth orbit around the Earth from Redstone Arsenal and our sister operations center. 2 years later, we grow that constellation for Tranche 2, and when you add the Tranche 2 constellation, Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 grows you to about 450 satellites, which when you put about 450 regular M&Ms, it fills up the mason jar all the way to the top. And I think that's a really good visual kind of representation of the magnitude of capability that we're bringing from Redstone Arsenal and Grand Forks to the warfighter. Yeah. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and I would assume as your presence is continuing to grow here on Redstone Arsenal and with your sister location up in North Dakota, how has it been? We talk about it a lot on the podcast with Huntsville just being a smart place. What has it been like to recruit and recruit workforce to help with the mission that SDA is doing in a town like Huntsville?
Well, I think it's been easier. I mean, Grand Forks Grand Forks has a lot of inherent capabilities up there, but just by nature of being in Huntsville, we have the ability to attract and recruit a lot of people. Our mission is very exciting. It's not hard to attract people to this mission. It's actually easy. In fact, we kind of struggle sometimes because we're not a very large organization. We try to stay small. We try to stay nimble. We try to stay a little bit uncomfortable in our own skin so we can continue to move fast. And sometimes we have to turn some folks away that we'd like to have, but we certainly are open for hiring people and trying to bring people on with skill sets that we need. One of the unique things that we have done that we've been able to do here in Huntsville is we've had jobs that actually are assigned up at our headquarters in Chantilly, Virginia, and people have said, "I want to live in Huntsville."
Wow.
Or "I live in Huntsville. I'll do that job for you if I can live in Huntsville." And our agency has said, you're the right person? Absolutely. And so we have a mission technical support cell group that's totally made up of folks that are here in Huntsville whose billet may be up at our headquarters, but they're here because they this is where they want to be, and this is the place where they're most comfortable, and this is where their home is, and that technical group is here as well to help us.
Yeah, and it's incredible just to think through your journey from here in Huntsville, coming to Space Camp, the beginning to the now being a part of the SDA and kind of the presence that it has here on Redstone. It's a full circle kind of moment.
It is, and it's mind-blowing, because if you had told 13-year-old me that when he was in his 50s that he would be building the first satellite command and control facility for the Department of the Air Force just 3 or 4 miles from Space Camp, I would have told you you're nuts.
Yeah. And
that's what happened. I mean, the chances of that are just unbelievable. So yeah, my personal story is tied inextricably with Huntsville.
And it's incredible just to continue to see the impact it's going to have. I mean, I think you've probably had some pretty unique experiences either with work or just as personal life here in Huntsville as you've seen Huntsville grow. Is there a unique experience, either it can be within work or it could be just even outside of work, just being in Huntsville or having lived here for the last 10 years that stands out among the rest?
I think that the community is great. I think that the way that we see the chamber, for instance, how the chamber looks out for the interests of this area has been very impressive to observe. Certainly, Team Redstone has been phenomenal. I mean, I've never seen an installation with such a variety of. I mean, we have Marshall Space Flight Center, and we're teamed with them, teamed with the FBI. I mean, we all work together to work as one federal installation of excellence. It truly is a real team out there, and it's a real privilege to be part of it. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Of course, having the Space and Rocket Center with that uniqueness of Space Camp as the ultimate ambassador for the capabilities of Huntsville has certainly been something that's been fun to watch as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cool thing too. We did an episode earlier where their introduction to Huntsville was Space Camp for their daughter, and her daughter came and they stayed here, and then they fell in love with Huntsville, and now they've lived here for the last 8 or 9 years. So it's cool just the impact that the Space Camp and just Huntsville it's in general, like that community element. Even though we are becoming a big city, I think there's still that tight knit community that can be found throughout all of Huntsville. But I appreciate you taking the last little bit talking about the work you do with the SDA. And if there's anything else you kind of want to end off with? Yeah,
I think that we're known as the Rocket City, and we're very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. But and that denotes rockets and propulsion and missile defense. We're adding satellite on-orbit operations, so we will be putting a lot of spacecraft into orbit, and they will be flown from Redstone. And so we're putting we're putting the punctuation mark on the space that goes with the Rocket City, and we're glad to be here and happy to be able to do that.
Well, I appreciate you taking the last little bit to chat. I thoroughly enjoyed learning more about what the work you do with the SDA.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed hearing more about what makes Huntsville so smart.